The remedy. The remedy. What's underneath the situation you don't realize? So let's examine with a critical eye. Put on your glasses and let it magnify the truth that lies hidden under all those lies. Cause everybody has nobility, and if you look beyond what your eyes can see, you'll see they're just like you and me, and now we're giving you the remedy. Welcome to the Remedy Podcast. This podcast is a project of WEBB Squared, a North Carolina nonprofit that works to increase wealth for Black businesses through connection, network, and opportunity. Our host is Stephanie Terry, the Executive Director of WEBB Squared, and our co-hosts are Associate Director Rinnie and myself, Mashallah Salaam. I am the Media and Production Specialist. In this podcast, we hope to bring consciousness to the racial divide and speak on emerging new narratives about race. Thanks for joining us today. We hope you will enjoy the podcast.
Good morning, everyone.
How are you doing today, Stephanie? Mashallah?
I'm very tired, but happy to be here.
I'm actually doing fantastic. In fact, I need to come back to Earth. I haven't been on Earth.
Where have you been floating around?
I've been floating around somewhere in inner space, and I gotta ground myself. So I'm a little bit flighty this morning. Does anyone know what that feels like to be flighty sometimes?
Well, I mean, we just had a 3-day weekend. We hopefully didn't think about work too much.
I sure didn't at all. Even though I love my work.
I think it's easy to become grounded once we start focusing back on work.
Yes.
But it was nice to have a little bit of a break.
My weekend was really good. I went to my nephew's birthday party, and he turned 4 years old.
Oh, nice.
So it was really nice seeing him and happy and opening his presents.
So you had a good weekend.
Yeah,
How
it
about
was
with
great.
the nephew?
Yeah, I saw my sister, my brothers, and just like a few of my little cousins. It was cool because they're all around the same age. They're all boys, and it just happened. It just seems like a miracle that they get to grow up together and like just have that friendship already built in.
Nice. And Rinnie, what did you do this weekend?
I mostly focused on art because I myself am having an art show coming up soon. So I had to prepare some canvases to be hung, but also I did a big painting. It's like 30 by 30 and I'm calling it Fluidity, and I like it. It's abstract.
Oh, nice.
So I can't wait to show it off at some point.
And I'm just loving the new haircut.
Thank you.
I mean, it really looks good.
Yeah, I learned that I could cut my own hair during the pandemic. I'm still not able to want to go sit in a barbershop, but my hair was starting to feel like I needed a trim. So,
well, I mean, you did a fantastic job. I don't know anybody that can cut their own hair. You cut your own hair?
No.
I twist mine, but no, you did a great job. So me and the hubby this weekend, we went out to dinner and we cleaned our house. We had a fabulous time. We watched movies. So we're really empty nesting it. It was beautiful. Nice 3-day weekend. Oh, our son got engaged to his girlfriend.
Oh,
yeah.
Congratulations.
Yeah, he had a Labor Day cookout in the park. This is Michael's son, Chris. And he got engaged to his beautiful fiance. Her name is Brooke, and she's like smart and pretty and nice. And so it was just a great weekend.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah, it was really, really nice. So, resilience.
We're back on resilience again.
Yeah, I know. Are we beating a dead horse?
No, I think that it's a really important topic. I feel like there's a lot that we could, continue talking about resilience. But we have an angle to explore today, right?
We always have angles. What's the angle?
We're going to look at resilience and art, and how does art sustain us when things are looking bad for us?
I mean, that is just so perfect. And I don't think I've thought about art as resilient, but now that I think about it, so my art is words and poetry. And I can remember, I think probably I was like 11 or 12 years old. And I would get so overwhelmed with like whatever what was happening, that the only thing that would soothe me was writing poetry. And that's how I got through my turbulent teen years and through my 20s and through a bad marriage and messed up relationships. I just would write poetry as a way of like helping me get through and sort through the emotions and things that I was feeling. So that it's a twist. It's a different way of looking at resiliency, but just think about like how the artists in ourselves and in our lives really help us manage life, or just like appreciate life. Or what do you think, Mashallah?
Yeah, I like to get creative in moments where I just don't know what else to do. So sometimes I write songs and that will like express what I'm feeling, and it just allows me to put myself in like a better space.
Yeah.
It's not just like you're being creative to make beautiful things, but art is often also a voice of resistance. It's a voice of, for lack of a better word, darkness, moving into light to illuminate where we're stuck as a society, where we're, stuck in ourselves. That art has a way of moving us forward when things look bad culturally as well as, individually.
Yeah, it's like a mirror to the soul. And also it can be a ladder out of, who says that? Bindu. Shout out Bindu, my mentor. She says music is the ladder. She didn't say it, but she's repeating, I think, as a holy writing. Music is the ladder of the soul. And how many times have I heard a song that has completely shifted my mood, right? Or taken me back to a time or place, or just it was like a emotional hug. So, whether it be just the melody, or the words themselves, the poetry and the music, or just a combination of both of them. So art is a fantastic tool of resilience that we encourage you all to remember that.
Yeah, I remember when we were first moving into the pandemic, and they were talking about saying, well, you're going to have to be at home. You're going to have to work from home. We're going to have to restructure our communities so that people aren't out and about in public. And I remember listening to the mayor of Durham give a speech, and he actually said, and I expect when this is over to see a flourishing of art.
Wow.
He sent a kind of like a call or a mission to artists to use the time to create and create well, and we're now, a year and a half into it. And so I know people have started moving out and about, and people aren't caring as much as they did at the beginning of the pandemic. But, in my own life, the last year and a half, I have created so much art. I mean, it's just been such a big part of holding me together during this time, because I live alone, and I spent months by myself.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I don't think I've written anything since the pandemic, maybe like one or two things, but sometimes, poetry can be evasive for me like that. I'll go through the thing, and then after I've gone to the other side of it, then all this poetry comes out. Sometimes it happens like that. What about you, Mashallah?
Well, I wish that I would have written more in my journal during the beginning of the pandemic, because there was just so much going on. But when I fasted, that's when I started writing and documenting my experience. And it was really nice to be able to have that time to reflect. And I really just enjoy having that to look back on,
Mm-hmm.
kind of like a memory, something to help me just remember what times were like.
Mm-hmm. Nice, nice. So I'll just read these poems. It's 2 poems. So this first poem is called Poetry. And I honestly don't remember what was going on when I wrote this, but I can tell that I was acknowledging that poetry is a tool that I use to be resilient.
Mm.
Okay. There are times when his arms are not long enough to wrap me up. And her words don't soothe enough to comfort me. When chamomile and bed feathers just can't put me to rest. When my soul feels so weighted down and my mission seems so long and hard and confusing, to focus is a struggle. There are times when I find myself deep down in the recesses of myself. And you, poetry, are always there, quietly, patiently, writing me back to me. This one is called The Countdown. I really love this one. And this one is about me trying to come to terms with religion, with Christianity and Christ and the stories around the devil. 10,000 years of fear and fallacies started off with one lie, and the pride of a planetary prince and his nefarious alibis of freedom and free will. He blinded the eyes and darkened the minds and tried to block the right, but only managed to turn off the lights. And we have been sleeping ever since. The countdown. It took 1,000 years for this fall. And who knew that the flash of light from heaven was a sign of war? That the number 9 means to be born. And when we awakened, smacked and crying, we would be giving birth to death in our minds. It seems for all times, 'cause the born are raised to die, and the lies continue to blind, and the generations keep wondering why. The countdown. This fall, making fear of heaven over there and hell over here, that God and us are no longer one, and that he has only one physical son and no daughters with no names. This great separation is our greatest shame and the reason behind all of our pain. They say that the truth shall set you free, but truth be told, it makes a mockery of all that we believe. The countdown. This poem, prose, prayer, plea is for your and my release from this living, breathing dream. Here is an invitation to peace. Nothing ever did from pain or pride was done. Images born in illusions can never become. You can crucify the body, but never the sun, 'cause the sun identified his mind with the eternal inside and wave goodbye to his physical eyes, speaking with no words a most powerful cry. I am more than this body you see. My spirit is and will always be. This poem, prose, praise, prayer, is for your and my release. Help us to re-examine our beliefs. This is the beginning of the road to peace.
So, yeah, I've always kind of had this existential crisis of soul anxiety. And most of my life, I've been kind of like obsessed with like the meaning of things. What does this mean? What does that mean? And I feel like when I wrote the poem, it was shifting. I called it The Right Questions, like moving from asking, what does this mean, in order towards more of a focus on how do I live? You know, how do I show up in the world, instead of like being focused on the meaning of why this event is happening. Like, how do I respond to that? How do I move into a stronger relationship with myself as an agent of my own, you know, destiny, versus just reacting to the things around me and saying, well, what does this mean? Like, why did this happen to me? And so that was what the poem was about. And I think that kind of relates to resiliency, just because resiliency is more in my conscious now than it was before. And so I think we can figure out ways to show up in the world, and that helps us be more resilient to what's happening around us.
Nice. I like that.
I always ask, what does it mean to craft one's soul, to walk toward the mystery, to engage the powers? What does it mean to love another's body, another's heart, another's spirit, another's healing? What does it mean to rewrite one's own story, to be the hero, to be the one you need to be, the one who's been there all along the way, behind the veil? What does it mean to embark on sacred romance with the God who lives in your expansiveness, between the landscapes of the physical reality and of the soulful spirit? What does it mean to have purpose and a mission, and to set in motion the actions and events that will alter your destiny forever? What does it all mean? Does it mean anything at all? Maybe I'm asking the wrong questions all along. Maybe the question should be, how do I craft my soul, embrace the mystery, and engage the powers? How do I love another's broken body and fragile heart and injured spirit to aid in their healing? How do I rewrite the story of my disjointed life, the sorrows and pains, and offer strength and resilience to those I love, being for them who they need me to be in this soul-sick world? How do I romance my God, the wily trickster, and step faithfully into the expansiveness to live with purpose, stay on mission, and set in motion the actions and events that will alter the destiny of humankind forever? How? Only with boldness and audacity and tenaciousness. How? Only with fury, with ferociousness and fortitude. How? With clarity, with charity, and with love that transcends all love. I don't have like the formal definition, but I can tell you, like, back in the days when I was studying philosophy, this idea that we have existential anxiety, like we exist, but we don't know why we exist. And so when we don't have the why, we the anxiety is like, you're spending all this time kind of clenched up, like trying to figure out what the meaning of the life is. And
That's what existential means. Wow.
Well, I'm not sure if that's what it means. I don't have the formal definition in front of me. This is just off the cuff. But I'm explaining this like state of most of my life being anxious about the meaning of my, like, what is the meaning? Why am I here? What is my purpose? What is my goal? And so I feel like moving away from that anxiety is, okay, I can't answer that question. I don't know why. I can study theology, I can study philosophy, I can study deep spiritual truths or whatnot. But the reality is that we're just bodies and we're just people and we're here. And if we kind of like loosen up around this anxiety a little bit and just kind of like live more in the moment and with resiliency, I don't know. For me, it's like the anxiety is a little bit less, and I'm just kind of like, oh, okay. Well, I want to be bold. I want to move in the world with love and to be a little audacious and to create. And those are conscious choices now instead of like, just responses to this like anxiety that I don't know what my life is about.
That is so interesting because I am reading The Healing Wisdom of Africa by Patrick Some, and he talks about the African indigenous view of life and your life's purpose. And he said in his culture, I think it's called the Dagara tribe, but not just there. I just think this is indigenous, is that everyone's life has a purpose. And it is the goal of the community, the village, when the child is born, and the whole point of rites of passage, initiation ceremonies, and mentorship is to help reveal or help the person remember what their life's purpose is. Because if you don't know, you will have this anxiety. And he says that, points out, and I'm going to do my interpretation or filter, but he says that's what he sees as one of the problems of Western culture, is that so many, young people are just searching for purpose and connection. And as the society continues to individualism, just separate us off, that angst becomes so extreme to almost at a crisis level. So that's amazing. So, and as I was reading it, I can remember, being a teenager and like, okay, what am I here for? Like, what am I supposed to do? But not knowing exactly what it was different from not believing that I had a purpose. I knew I had a purpose. I was just trying to figure out what it was. And I think that answer emerges, it unfolds as you go through life. And so now at 52, I have a definite understanding of what it is, even though I don't know exactly how it's going to play out, but and I remember when I first got the first understanding, I said, oh, I'm here to help people remember how to be happy. I was like, what kind of crazy ass purpose is that? Oh, I cursed, but sorry. But I remember like we were having a dinner party. We had friends over, and they were like, what are you here to do? And I said, to remind people how beautiful they are. And they were like, what? That's not purpose.
Mhm.
Do you want to be a doctor or do you? I was like, no, I'm here to remind people how beautiful they are. And I just don't quite know what it's going to look like. And I remember being ridiculed. And I was in my 20s because I couldn't form what I was feeling deeply inside. And I was sharing something deep. So thank you, Rinnie.
Well, it's such interesting that you mentioned, because I feel like as a culture, we lack a way of sharing wisdom that cultures all over the world, and maybe they still do, but we've gone in and we've disrupted so many cultures that the wisdom seems to be lacking. And it's like they said that the 20s were people are still teenagers into their 20s, that it feels like even in the 30s and 40s of our culture, people still kind of like have kind of an adolescent kind of existence. Like people aren't growing into mature adults. And I think that we lack sharing wisdom with younger generations, because the culture is so fragmented and the individualistic that people are just like out there and they're lost, and there's just something about the way the culture is shaped that we don't, people talk about elders, but are there true elders out there anymore that are like teaching the kids just, hey, I'm older, I have wisdom, let's share this wisdom with you.
Right.
Instead we just kind of let kids just release them into the world and you'll figure it out.
Yeah, it almost seems like my generation is more unprepared than any other generation in a way. And although we have things like technology to help us out, I feel like people are like thinking, oh, they can just rely on that. They got that. We didn't have that back then. But I still feel like there's a lot of value in having the guidance of elders. And when you need to ask questions about deep things that you can't necessarily Google. So thinking about our purpose in the world, that reminds me of this particular point in my life where I felt just very low and very sad. And it felt like a depression. And I noticed that during that time, in the beginning, I wanted to be alone, but it became sort of unbearable to be just by myself in those thoughts. So I began to hang out with the friends that were around, and it really helped me to just converse with them and even give advice. And I noticed that in those times, I still really enjoyed being there for people and giving advice to people. And that was something that I always loved to do, just to be there and help comfort others, even if I wasn't feeling that great myself. And that made me remember that what I felt I needed to do in the world was to help others. And that felt like just a clear purpose. So my reflection is about the myth of having to be perfect in order to feel like you can be of service to others.
That's powerful. That's really powerful.
There is a myth that you have to have it all together and be perfect in order to be of service to others. I remember ever since I was a little girl, I always loved helping people, whether it was giving advice to friends or even associates, listening and being a shoulder to cry on. I wanted to heal the world, but as I grew up, societal structured realities began to beat me down, making me feel as though certain things were impossible for me to attain. I felt broken. Anxiety flooded my mind, and my spiritual connection didn't feel as strong as it used to be. Is this all that will become of me? How do I break free from this feeling? How can I be of service to others when I feel so lost, so unreliable? The truth is, the spark never really left me. It was in a dormant phase. Occasionally, I would feel spouts of hope peeking through the darkness. It felt like a small fire. I found ways to tend to it and help it grow through the connections I made and the relationships I built. Which brings me to my next point. Isolation is deadly. I remember taking several courses in college where we delved into psychology and discussions about the human mind. One of the topics that stuck with me was when we were discussing suicide. I remember hearing that people who lived in areas surrounded by more people were less likely to commit suicide than those who were in more rural or isolated areas. The lack of socialization can cause a person to feel more lonely. They aren't being checked on. They aren't going out with friends as much, and the feeling of loneliness can cause a person to live constantly in the negative thoughts until it consumes them. When I was a young teen, there was a time where I fell into deep sadness. I could barely get myself to move. I couldn't enjoy things that I enjoyed before. I was constantly reminded of my own sadness. I wanted to find a way to escape myself. I knew deep down that I didn't want to die, but I also didn't know when I would begin to live again. Once I was finally able to bring myself to my feet instead of the cold embrace of my couch or bed, two places I often transition between when I feel my lowest, I decided that if I couldn't escape myself, I could at least find a temporary escape in the friends I had around me. I began frequently visiting one of my neighborhood friends, almost daily. Being around friends is almost like a dose of natural medicine. It can ease the pain and take your mind off of whatever is troubling you, and at the time, or at least, bring you temporary ease. Any moment of solace, even for a moment, I appreciated compared to the constant discomfort I was facing internally. In moments when you're not feeling well, you begin to notice more and appreciate the moments when you do feel well. This is healing. The process of healing doesn't always feel linear. Sometimes you continue to circle around and revisit some of the dark places you were trying to escape in the process. But then you learn how to manage, how to face the fear of those places. You begin to recognize those feelings and then find that you are now in control. It's always hard when you are currently going through something without knowing your way out. Just keep going, and you'll begin to feel those moments of peace again. Then it becomes more moments of peace, until you suddenly realize, once you've made it through the storm, you come out on the other side. I can't promise that you'll never revisit those places in the dark again, but this time, those places will no longer have control over you. You will stare whatever challenge you're facing down and say, "You no longer scare me. I've been here before, and I know the way out." My desire to be there for others, even in times where I felt my lowest, never went away. It actually helped me to feel purpose. Drowning in my own sorrows was never going to help me grow as a person. But anytime I gave advice to someone else, it was as though I was giving that advice to myself as well. It made me happy to see others smile. It made me feel like I was helping. Don't let your current circumstance stop you from fulfilling your heart's desires. God knew who you were when He gave you your calling. Growing up, I was one of the most soft-spoken kids in the class, in my family actually. It was hard to believe that my voice would be able to carry much power. So I just spent most of the conversation listening. Later, I learned that the time I spent listening allowed me to speak in a way that allowed others to feel heard. I really only spoke when I felt I had something really important to say. In times where I let my mouth talk freely, I'd usually find a foot in it. I learned to take a step back and think about what I said before I said it. And although for a young kid that can be anxiety-inducing, it did help shape the future me. Although I might slip up and occasionally say the wrong thing, I'm working on owning up to my mistakes and not penalizing myself so harshly for not being perfect, because the truth is, no one is. Once I've learned how to extend grace to myself, it became easier for me to extend grace to others. And that to me is compassion. Even though I know that I still have a lot to work on and a lot of growing to do, I'm grateful for the journey because it helps me to better relate to others. I might not have my life all together, but it doesn't stop me from being able to be there for others who might be going through a similar or even more drastic situation. People want to know that they aren't alone. Don't put limits on yourself just because you don't think you've become your best self yet. As the church says, come as you are.
That's great.
Yeah, so, well, that's a wrap.
That's a wrap.
We'll be back next week. And in the meantime,
the revolution starts with dialogue. Thank y'all for listening. We love y'all.
This has been a joint podcast of WEBB Squared and Afro Future Productions. For those of you interested in learning more about our work at WEBB Squared, you can find out more at webbsquared.org. Don't forget to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. This is our conscious conversation. We hope you will subscribe today on your favorite podcast platform. Join the Remedy Membership Forum on Patreon to join us monthly for our members-only discussion. That's it for today. Until next week, thanks for listening.
What's underneath the situation you don't realize? So let's examine with a critical eye. Put on your glasses and let it magnify the truth that lies hidden under all those lies. Cause everybody has nobility, and if you look beyond what your eyes can see, you'll see they're just like you and me, and now we're giving you the remedy. Remedy.